CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Paris Johnson Jr., and other Ohio State football players have dreamed about hearing their name called in the NFL draft, and that dream for numerous players will come true in a few short days.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, April 24th in the year 2023, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. During this episode, we will discuss the back and forth feud a couple football analysts had surrounding CJ Stroud, and a former Ohio State football player gets suspended by the NFL. But before we get to any of that, numerous Ohio State football players have dreamed about hearing their name called in the upcoming NFL draft. Roger Goodell will be on Front Street, and he'll be calling off numerous names as those players get announced that they have been drafted into the National Football League. And the dream that numerous players have had will come true in a few short days. We all discuss and think about the players from all over Ohio State history that have heard their name drafted in the NFL draft. There have been 480 Ohio State players that have been drafted to date. That number will go up in a few short days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday during the upcoming NFL draft, as Stroud will hear his name called. Njigba will hear his name called. Paris Johnson Jr., he'll hear his name called as well, because it's the time of year where dreams come true. Think about you being, or potentially being, in that situation. 5, 6, 8, 10, 11. This dream came into your head that, hey, man, I love football. Football's fun to play. I would love to play in the NFL. It's a dream of mine to play professional football at the highest level, not just professionally overseas and say maybe Australia or in France or another country in the US of A. Nope. You want to be drafted into the National Football League, the best brand of football, the best football that could be played in the entire world. You work, you grind, you work, you grind, you sweat, you may shed some blood every now and then. You keep grinding, you keep working. Middle school, you get good. High school, you get better. And then all of a sudden, you play for one of the biggest brands in college football, the Ohio State University. And all of a sudden, things keep going. Oh, you go well, you start playing, you start, 2-year starter. Oh, man, my dream is right in front of me. I've been dreaming about this for a long period of time, and the next thing I know, it's what I have been dreaming about. It can actually come true. It's crazy to think about what is going through the minds of the players that I listed, and there are other players that will be drafted this week as well. Some might get drafted. Cam Brown will probably get drafted. You also got guys like Jerron Cage and Paula Ian Oti who could get drafted. You got Zach Harrison, Ronnie Hickman, DeJuan Jones, Tanner McAllister, Bradley Robinson, the long snapper himself, Mitch Rossi, Stroud, Teron Vincent, Luke Whippler. All of these players are looking to hear their name called in the draft this weekend. Some will be day one guys in round 1. Others will be day 2 guys in rounds 2 and 3. Others, rounds 4 through 7, on day 3 of the draft. It doesn't matter for many of them where their name is called. They want to hear their name called. Now, there are some players, unlike Stroud, who's going to be an automatic player on the roster, and Njigba and Johnson Jr. and Jones, they're not looking to potentially fight for a roster spot. Seems like they'll automatically have one. You got guys that'll get drafted round 5, 6, 7, maybe even an undrafted free agent that'll have to fight for that roster spot. That'll have to get things done quickly to impress the people on the team and the front office and the coaches and say, look, I understand you drafted me and you weren't even sure if I was going to be the guy to make the roster. But what I can do is prove to you and show you that I deserve this spot on the roster. The final roster going into week 1 of the upcoming NFL season. Like I mentioned earlier, 480 players, have been drafted out of The Ohio State University. That number could easily be up to 490 at the end of the week. Now, I don't think it will be. I think realistically, you're probably going to see maybe 8 guys drafted, maybe 7 guys drafted. I don't think you'll get 10 or more in the upcoming draft. There were 14 players that participated in Ohio State's Pro Day about a month ago. Yeah, all 14 can get drafted. I just don't think all 14 are good enough compared to the other players that are out there that are going to get drafted this weekend. This is a great time of year, man. Like, I was thinking about, like, going into this show, thinking about what times of year do we get excited about Ohio State football. Of course, you get excited about Ohio State football during the spring game. Like, the spring game itself in the spring is a highlight of many people's weeks. Some people, they're going to the spring game. Some watch it on the television. But you have it marked down in your calendar, the spring game. We get excited about Ohio State football during the football season. I mean, it's kind of, you may say, hello, that's expected, but you get excited about Ohio State football during the football season from Labor Day all the way through, hopefully, the first weekend in December. The Buckeyes are playing football, and then it's bowl season. Playoffs. Like, you expect Ohio State to be in the playoffs. Like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and be like, oh, you're a homer. No, this is reality, buddy. It don't matter if this is an Ohio State show or a college football show. You expect Ohio State to be in the playoff every year. It's an expectation. So you expect Ohio State to be playing a game either December 30th, 31st, maybe January 1st, because it's just Ohio State that has the talent to get there every single year. It's an expectation. But, man, there's a week about draft week. It doesn't get the attention by as many people as game weeks do, or maybe even the spring game. But this is the week dreams come true. And I'll be watching on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm sure a lot of you will be watching or paying close attention to the Twitter or the Instagram or the Facebook to get updates. Maybe you like the videos, you like the behind-the-scenes things. Go on the YouTube. I'm sure you'll get some of that there as well. This is a time of year that is exciting. And as I went through all the players that could get drafted, some are concrete first-round picks. Some guys are maybe first round, maybe second round. Some are, hey, 3 picks, and that you know for a fact they're going to go there. It don't really matter, man. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and be like, they get a feel-good story. No, this really isn't just a feel-good story. Getting drafted in the NFL is a big deal, and I cannot wait to hear numerous Buckeye players have their name called in the NFL draft Thursday, Friday, and Saturday later this week. There's a player that'll have his name called later this week that was in the middle of a big conversation about a decision that he made over the summer. There were 2 football analysts, Brady, Quinn, and Ryan Clark, that went back and forth in regards to a decision Stroud made. What were they discussing that got the conversation so heated? We'll discuss it next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Once again, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. We are all looking to see what's going to happen later this week as Locked On Buckeyes rolls on. We're looking to see where players like CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DeJuan Jones, Harris Johnson Jr., even Zach Harrison will be drafted in the upcoming NFL draft. And you know what? It's an exciting time for numerous players. But also, this is the time of year where we hear off the wall or maybe unexpected stories about players we watch play every Saturday in the fall. We really haven't heard much about Njigba, which really shocks me. I heard something on the First Team podcast that recently my guy Ryan Roberts will be with us later this week talking about some more draft prospects podcast. He is one of the co-hosts of, and they were talking about Njigba, and someone was saying maybe one of the things about Njigba and questions about him going into the season were wondering if he quit on the team, or maybe that he was healthy enough to play, but also that he didn't want to play to prepare for the NFL draft, but never made that clear or made it public. People were saying, oh, this, oh, that. And I even heard somebody on that podcast saying hamstring injuries are tricky. It was actually, I do believe Ryan Roberts said this. Hamstring injuries are tricky. When you think it's okay to come back and play, you get back on the field, and ultimately, you're not fully healthy. So one person was saying, I don't remember him coming back on the field. And Ryan was like, actually, I think he came back a couple times. And he was never healthy to play the football. So Ryan actually stuck up and said, hey, man, sometimes hamstring injuries, you don't know what to expect when it comes to the rehab and recovery process. Well, last week, Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame quarterback, former NFL quarterback, and Ryan Clark, former NFL player, former player at LSU, both of them had a little back and forth tit for tat on the Bird app. One working for CBS Sports, Brady Quinn, CBS Sports Radio as well. Ryan Clark working for the Worldwide Leader. They went back and forth because Brady Quinn said he heard that CJ Stroud committed to go to the Manning Passing Academy to work with the youngsters, but then ended up ghosting them, and he was working out with his future Ohio State players, or current Ohio State football teammates, to prepare for the upcoming season. I don't know what is true or not. I'm not trying to get here and say I agree with Brady Quinn and him saying that the story he heard was true or not true. I'm not saying I'm not going to dispute the story that he believes he was told about Stroud and how people view the Manning family in the NFL. Ryan Clark came up and defended Stroud and said, okay, cool, like this is what I have heard. This is the information that I have, and even shared a clip of Stroud from the Pivot podcast that Ryan Clark is one of the co-hosts of, and shared a quote from Stroud during that moment, which is great. I'm not trying to go back and forth between them two, but just realize we're in the final few days before the draft, and there's a good chance you're going to hear some more slander about an Ohio State player. Really haven't heard much about DeJuan Jones or Paris Johnson Jr. or Teron Vincent or Zach Harrison. Really haven't heard much about a lot of these guys. Jerron Cage either. No one's really going to get the name and notoriety and the attention in the clicks that a CJ Stroud will. Now, in Brady Quinn's defense, he was responding to a question that came on the podcast. So you say, Jay, why would Brady Quinn come out with this story? He was asked a question on a CBS Sports podcast. I believe it was the Pick Six podcast. And he responded with something about Stroud that was an answer to the question that was thrown at him. So it wasn't like Brady Quinn came on there to throw out shade and throw some rocks at Stroud's name to knock his name down the board. That was not what was going on. He was simply responding to a question. Don't be surprised if you hear more about Stroud or hear anything about Njigba or hear something about DeJuan Jones. Don't be shocked at all, especially when it comes to DeJuan Jones and people latter part of the first round or even beginning of the day of round 2. Don't be shocked if you hear Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or maybe even Daniel Jeremiah. I don't know if Bucky Brooks is going to be on the TV or not, but Kurt Warner, don't be shocked if you hear these guys saying, well, I heard this about DeJuan Jones, and I heard that about DeJuan Jones, and I heard this, and I heard that. And you're going to sit here and say, I'm going to defend my guy. I hadn't heard that at all. You cannot come up here and say that this is a thing that you've heard because I haven't heard that. Don't be shocked. This is something that's going to happen this time of year, especially on draft day. People want to hear the positive, the negative. You're going to hear some good stories as well. This is just a way sports work right now. I don't like it. I don't like how there are all these stories that come up right now. You didn't hear a lot of these things come up during the season. You didn't hear a lot of the things about Stroud slander or Njigba slander. People really were kind of nice to Njigba. Just being honest with you. People were really nice to Njigba when it came to his hamstring injury and him coming back, playing against Notre Dame coming out. Going back against Toledo coming out. coming back after a bye week against Iowa and coming out. Like, people understood, like, hey, man, it's a hamstring. It's tricky. People were nice to him. I remember when Nick Bosa went down a few years ago. I believe it was an abdominal injury. And people were like, man, he quit on the team. Man, Ohio State could have been special. And this dude said, hey, my future is more important than the team's success. And people were just throwing rocks and darts at his name consistently. And Jake was been pretty shielded from that stuff this time of year. I don't know what's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's more slander or more darts or more things thrown at the ways of these players. Why would it not shock me? Because NFL teams know if they get a narrative out there in even a short period of time between now and the start of the NFL draft, there's a good chance they can find a way to get their guy. There's a good way for them to be able to get the guy that they want at the spot they want, or maybe to be able to make a trade for them to move up to get a guy that they want in this draft. Some things are said to benefit the team starting a rumor. Some things are said to detour somebody else who's in their division from drafting a player that they don't want to go up against twice a year. Sports, man. It's football. It's draft season. Things get crazy. In regards to the feud between Brady, Quinn, and Ryan Clark, I will always say, fact check what you hear. Now, if you don't have the ability to fact check, listen to the entire clip in the Pick Six podcast. I do believe is available on all audio podcast platforms, and I do believe it's on the YouTube as well. So if you want to say, ooh, I heard this, didn't hear the full clip, go back and check it out. I mean, I will literally sit here on my phone. I will literally be here on my phone and download podcast and say, okay, cool. Like, I want to be able to know the full story, so I'm going to listen to the podcast, or maybe I'll watch the podcast. Why? Because sometimes a 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute clip does not give the full context about what's going on at that time. So I will always say pause, pump the brakes before making any quick, harsh snap judgments, maybe, for things you hear about players. Fact check it, man. You don't have to have sources. Your phone, man, you got so much access with your cellular device in your pocket or your purse. Check it out. Use it. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app. Same place you can check out Locked on Buckeyes. I'm sure you can find all these other podcasts as well and be able to understand the full context of things that are said about Ohio State football players, Stroud, Johnson Jr., Jones, and Jigba, or anybody else that can or will be drafted in the upcoming NFL draft. Speaking of the NFL, not the draft specifically, but a player that used to play at Ohio State, and Jamison Williams, was recently suspended by the NFL for a very interesting rule that he broke. What did he do? They got him suspended for 6 games in the upcoming season. We'll discuss it next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. Thanks for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen every day. The everydayers don't want to miss a full week of shows getting you ready for the upcoming NFL draft. Last week, we heard my guy Ryan Roberts of RiseandDraftScouting.com go over Paris Johnson Jr., go over DeJuan Jones and what they would bring to the NFL, an NFL team, and where they might fall in the upcoming NFL draft. Well, Ryan and I recorded about an 8 to 10 minute segment about Luke Whippler. There's a good chance that'll be found on tomorrow's show. And then coming up Wednesday, we're going to get Ryan's take on Zach Harrison, Ronnie Hickman, and Cam Brown. You don't want to miss a full week of shows leading into the start of the 2023 NFL Draft, when we'll have coverage right here of that all week long. Man. I was sitting down on the couch recently, and as Locked on Buckeyes rolls on here on a Monday, I want to kind of go to the next level, the professional league of football, to kind of discuss a weird rule, and a rule that might impact Ohio State players that will be drafted this year. So we all know the NFL is getting into gambling and is a franchise, is a league that is starting to embrace the bets. not embracing debate, as I almost stole a line from the first take. They're embracing the bets. And we have seen NFL teams have sports books inside their arenas. I want to say I heard there were 10 NFL stadiums that have sports books literally inside arenas. Maybe even CJ Sports Book, or may it be FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever it might be. I have heard a lot of people discuss and say, well, NFL teams have these sports books out there. This is a great move for the National Football League. Even though the NFL has official betting partners, and the NFL teams might have sports books inside their arenas, there are still rules prohibiting NFL players, from gambling on certain things. The NFL still does not allow NFL players to place bets on NFL games. That is still illegal. You might say, Jay, that's crazy. That's hogwash. That is dumb. But that's the rule the NFL still has in place. And then there's a rule that Jameson Williams got caught breaking, and his suspension got handed down. He is going to miss 6 games in the upcoming season. So over the weekend, there are 5 NFL players that were recently announced as being suspended during the upcoming season. 3 are indefinite suspensions. Those players are going to miss a year. Then they have to reapply to get reinstated back to the NFL. Those players got suspended for betting on NFL games. There were 2 other players, Jameson Williams being one of them, former Ohio State wide receiver. He got suspended 6 games along with one of his teammates, I do believe, got suspended for 6 games. For what? Betting on college games inside the team facility. That's dumb. That is stupid. Not that they broke the rule. The rule itself is dumb. Like, I want to say 2 things here, twofold, and we're going to get out of here, close up today's show. First off, I think the rule is dumb. I understand betting on college games is okay. But why in the world is it wrong for you to do it in a certain area? Like, if I want to, I understand there are things I can do on the show. There are things that I cannot do on the show. Like, there are things I can say, things I cannot say. Why? Because the Locked On Podcast Network has rules and regulations about how things need to go on the show. There are rules, and if I break a rule, I would get a text or a phone call about something that I had said or that I did that was not following the rules, regulations, and guidelines that have been set by the Locked On Podcast Network. If you work for the ESPN, if you work for Fox Sports or FS1, if you work for Outkick, or if you work for any of these outlets, CBS Sports HQ, if you work for anybody, these companies, sports companies, they have rules and regulations you must go by. And if you break one or break numerous, you're going to get called in and have a conversation. So when it comes to Jameson Williams' suspension, the rule is you can place bets on college games, but it limits where you place those bets. As much as I don't think the rule is smart, because I don't think people in the NFL think it's smart either. Well, a lot of them on the outside that follow sport, I think a lot of them don't think it's wise or a good rule. It is still a rule. So no matter what my thought is about the rule, there is a rule, and if you break it, there will be a punishment. The NFL is a league that's going to continue to have this thought and process about, hey, if you bet on games, we're going to do some investigation. And if we catch you while doing investigation betting on games, if it's NFL games or if it's a college game in the wrong area, we're going to lay down the law. It does seem hypocritical by some that the NFL is saying, okay, cool, we'll make the money, we'll have these betting partners, we'll do all these things with these sports books, but y'all can't bet on games. Like, it does seem like a major thing that is kind of a sign of a hypocrite. I can understand that. It's still a rule. I'm a person that does kind of go with follow the rules. Even if it's dumb, follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, there's a good chance you could get in trouble. Now, I will end it with this. I wonder how many NFL players or NFL teams know that this is a rule. Like, I truly am in my head scratching my head saying, how many people did Jameson Williams really know that betting on college games inside the Detroit Lions facility was illegal? I don't know, man. Like, I have no idea if he knew that. Because as I hear former NFL players, or I heard Pat McAfee say he didn't know that this was a rule, that's something that couldn't happen. Ian Rappaport, someone that follows the NFL almost better than it covers the NFL at a super high rate. Sometimes some people say better than anybody else in the NFL. He was someone that said, I didn't know this was a rule. So I understand there are rules. There are things out there, some that make sense, some that don't make sense, whatever it is. No matter your thought about the rule, it is illegal in the National Football League to bet on college games inside team facilities. And if you get caught doing so, you will be suspended. Somebody asked me, how in the world does the NFL know where you place bets? One, they're all done electronically, and they can pinpoint where you are. And also, the NFL, don't you think the NFL is going to do their due diligence to figure out and find out randomly where people are betting on things and where people are doing certain things? Don't you think the NFL is going to be a league where it's like, oh, he did this, he did that, he did this. How does the NFL know this? Because they investigate. They find things out. They find things out about players getting drafted that these players thought would never come to light. So the NFL is going to investigate, especially when they're putting money out in this area, and they got rules. You may not like the rules. You may think it's stupid. No matter what the rule is, follow it. If you don't follow said rule, you will probably get caught. And if you get caught, you will get punished. Guys, out of here on a Monday. Fun show. Got more stuff about Luke Whippler, Zach Harrison, Ronnie Hickman, and Cam Brown coming up later this week. You can only find it right here on Locked on Buckeyes. As always, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. For the everydayers, thanks for coming back once again. Make sure, I thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked on Browns. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what the Browns are going to do going into the upcoming NFL draft. Locked on Browns is a place to be, the place for you to find the information about what your favorite NFL franchise will do in the 2023 NFL draft. Guys, this is Locked on Buckeyes on a Monday. I'm Jay Stevens. I am out of here. Let's have a good week. Let's start it off in a good way.